Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, and welcome for today's Hacking HR panel on leadership and AI, enabling and augmenting business and team leaders with AI. What a big title that one is, and I'm sure I've got lots to talk about on this. I'm Rod Hutchings. Today I'm in Canberra in Australia, and it's just 1 a.m. here, so excited to be here, but I'm looking forward to going to bed as well. So it's going to be a great conversation, and we've got a great group of panelists today to really have this conversation with. So without further ado, let's bring them forward.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you going? Well, I think I've been with everyone here before, which is really good. So looking forward again to catching up and having a conversation. And so to start us off, I'll get you to introduce yourself and maybe just share a bit about what excites you about this topic, and we'll go around clockwise. So Augustina is first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Agustina Berni. I am based in Argentina, and I have more than 20 years experience in the tech industry. I have led talent and HR at high-growth multinationals such as Google, Red Hat, and most recently Eventbrite, where I was the global HRBP senior manager for the product organization, supporting the chief product officer and his senior leadership. I'm excited to be here to discuss this critical theme about AI and leadership, because I know there's a lot of potential that we can leverage both within HR leadership and to support our leaders in the organization. Glad to be here today.
Thank you, and welcome to Debbie.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm currently sitting in a hotel room in LA, but I'm normally based in Chicago, so it's a wee bit early. So I have my coffee. I hope Rod maybe have a calming cup of tea after this. So I spent the majority of my working career either with large Fortune 100 type companies in the financial services industry or with rapid growth tech. And so it's been interesting to see that, and also supporting sort of the financial functions within these finance industries. My last role was Chief Talent Officer of Hub International, which is an insurance brokerage company. And now I've been out on my own for about 18 months, supporting companies across a variety of sectors. And like Agustina, I'm so excited for this topic. One, obviously it's everywhere, but two, I think, a lot of us have helped teams, organizations, individuals navigate change, transformational change, disruptive change. So I think, how do we frame this to say, yes, AI might be, the speed at which AI is hitting our business is new, but disruption is not. And so how do we both learn from that and then apply it forward? And just, I guess a little backdrop, I'm a former historian, so I like to think in terms of, sort of macro trends and looking back as well as looking forward. So very excited to join you all today.
Thank you. And welcome, Kahil. I think you're in another part of the world.
Yes, I'm currently in Karachi, Pakistan. My full name is Khalil Zafar. People have trouble pronouncing it, and I understand at Khalil it's a bit different to pronounce for most of the world. But no worries. I'm a management consultant specializing in future of work. I'm the author of a book called Future of Work Simplified, especially interested in the impact of AI and leadership. I work establishing their AI-based system and the future of work projects. Excited to amazing panel, and once we start talking, I'll give my input.
Excellent, thank you. And last but not least, Charmaine.
Hi everyone, I'm Charmaine. I am the founder and CEO of Chapter 2, which is an organizational and leadership consultancy and coaching practice. I built my career in HR, and I'm really excited about this because my first life was technology. That's what I got my college degrees in. And then I got into HR. So this is a perfect blend, and I am obsessed with all things technology, and AI is a part of that.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. And like I said, looking forward to the conversation. Um, as another sort of intro question, I thought that I'd throw in that I wasn't really originally planning to is, at least in my experience, is that leaders, at least in my experience, aren't really. I don't see people talking about how they're using AI, and a lot of people are using it and just keeping it in secret. So I'm just wondering if that's your experience, and anyone could just have a go at answering this. But I'm just wondering why aren't, like, it right now, it just feels like to me that people aren't out there admitting that they actually are using AI in all different ways, already. And it's sort of one of these. I'm not really sure why, but anyway, does anyone have that experience and want to a- start that off? Given that we're talking about how we help the leaders in the future, let's just see if we've got a problem at the moment.
I'm happy to start off, and then I have to say I'm feeling really humbled and excited to be with this panel with all your amazing backgrounds. So hats off to Hacking HR for putting us all together. I would say both. I'm finding as an executive coach and as a teams coach right now across sectors that yes, there is this hesitancy, and I think what I'm sensing and what I'm hearing from folks is it's coming from a couple of places. One, they're not experts. And a lot of our senior leaders that we're coaching are used to being experts and used to being really facile with whatever they're doing, right? That there's a comfort zone. And so I think there's this natural learning curve that comes. And so they're willing to admit to me, or they're willing to admit to like their small inner circle, but it's harder to be out there. And in actuality, I think, and that's where we go back to say, but remind them that they've done other hard things and they've learned and they need to model. And so I agree with you, Rod. There is this hesitancy. And I think it's from this like sense of ego. Like, I don't want to look bad. I don't want to look stupid. Look at, all those things where people did things they shouldn't have done. And so depending on the sector that they're in or the culture that they're in, sometimes is challenging for people to be a novice when they're at senior levels. So I think that that's part of what's going on. And the other piece is just not even understanding like all the ways in which I can use it. So sometimes I think there's this like analysis paralysis of like, well, where do I go and what do I do and how do I like dip my toe in a reasonable way? So a couple of things I've been seeing.
I think that's a very good start to the answering the question. I think that's probably exactly it. They're not experts, but I think
first of all, my apologies. My internet is extremely slow. If you people can hear me or not.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah. Do you want to have a go at the question?
Rod, I can go next after Debbie.
Yeah.
I definitely support the expert situation or conundrum leaders go through. And in addition to that, I think many are also hesitant because they don't know that their organizations stand in terms of the use of AI for professional purposes and the security, or if they may use one app or the other. And so as organizations start creating these policies and regulations around the use of AI, I think this will become more clear to our leaders as to how they can leverage these tools.
Yeah, that's another excellent point, isn't it? It's around, what's actually allowable to do. And so how comfortable can you be to talk about what you're actually doing? Because it does actually help.
Yeah. And if I might add, I would say that I believe it's also in part of being afraid that you are going to be perceived as less of an expert, or that your value is somehow diminished. It might be because you don't want people to know. It could be because you're concerned that it diminishes your credibility, whether that's with your teams or whether that's with your clients, that if you are admitting that you're using it, somehow it's, I'm not as smart as, instead of this is a tool. Personally, I use AI every day. Yesterday, my nephew wanted me to create images for him of dinosaurs, and I spent a lot of time having different bots create these images to send him, and we were excited about it. So I can't think of a day that I'm not using some AI too in the last couple of years, even if it's just creating dinosaur images for my nephew.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, I think that, and then, so again, coming back to this topic then, which is about enabling and augmenting business and team leaders with AI, I think that when leaders get to a point and they can openly talk about that they're actually using AI, it actually will help normalize it for the workforce, for the team leaders um, in the business. And I think when we get to that point where we need to get to, that really is where we'll start seeing the value, because then when people start talking about how they're using it, you're going to get sort of shared learnings, and you're going to find some hidden gems about, how it can actually help the business, a real win-win. So anyway, so that's sort of, I just introduced that just so we've got a bit of a why. There is real work to do here. This is not a simple thing, but it is different in the way, I think, introducing this change. All right, so I'll move on, and I'm going to come to Debbie next. And just so you've talked about you work with leaders. Can you share how AI is shaping your work with leaders today?
It's shaping it in a few different ways. So I think about myself as a practitioner, and then I think about what I'm seeing and my clients use and experiment with. So first, on the personal side, Charmaine, I am going to take a page out of your book. And so my son likes to draw different things, and I hadn't thought about doing that. So he likes to go search. I'll have him start searching on bots and get him used to it. So I think, one, I'm trying to become more conversant, right? So that is, I'm trying to experiment. My main one is ChatGPT. Occasionally we'll go into Gemini. I'm thinking about Claude and how I can go in and use some of the major ones. And I think it's like, what are they good for? What are they not? And I'm seeing it as a couple of different ways. So one, it is, are there things that they can use it for to streamline their work? Because a lot of obviously when I'm working with executives or teams, time is of the essence, and they're used to, sometimes it's like, I don't let go, or I'm having trouble delegating. And it's like, could you even delegate to not a team member, but could you delegate to someone outside the team into a tool that's even more efficient? So finding ways for them to practice delegating with more administrative tasks feels safer to them, right? So that's one place. But then I also, it's interesting, I was on part of an independent collective, and we had a guest speaker that was talking about using ChatGPT and how it's really changed his life and using it as a thinking partner. And so I was really taking a page out of that and saying, okay, so we know that knowing your prompts is really important. So if I'm thinking about, I have something complicated or complex to share with my organization, how do I, and I give the headlines, how can I break it down in a way that's digestible to senior leaders? How can I break it down in a way that's digestible to frontline leaders? How can I break it down in a way that's digestible to everyday employees? And so they can start to see, it's like, right, it's very specific things, but they can see the power of prompts. They can see how, oh, this can help me phrase things and prepare my communications, right? It's not that they're going to take it verbatim, but now they've got different language. And again, things that normally might have taken them an hour can take them 5 minutes, and then they can really use that time to hone it. So I'm finding that there are simple things that they can do that I'm encouraging them to do. Again, getting back to that point of that comfort. And then the other place that I'm working with them and they're thinking about is, okay, at a macro level, how and where is this enabling my workforce? How is this helping efficiency and productivity? Which, we can go out and have a whole separate panel on. But there's that piece where they're really looking for their IT departments, right? As Agustina is saying, what's our policy on this? Where can we use it? Where is it ethical to use? Where are we clear that we're doing the right thing by our customers? But can we find a way to minimize some pain points that our employees are feeling? And so it's also like thinking about them individually, and then it's thinking about their organizations. So it's a fun place to be. And again, I go, AI is AI today, but it was other technologies, it was other transformations, it was other significant changes that they've gone through. And so reminding them, what did you do? How did you experiment? And how are we applying it here? And finding small things they can do. So just a few things that I'm doing today with my clients.
Thank you. Thanks, Debbie. All right, and Cahill, I'll come to you next, and let's see how your audio goes. And so you work with organisation renewal transformation. Can you share how that AI has been coming as part of that, those transformation activities that you do, that you consult with? What's some of your experience? Can Cahill hear me? Everyone else hear the question? All right. I might go to you, Charmaine, next then. So you've led many leadership development activities. How's AI influencing the way you work with business leaders today?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I use some form of AI every day, and it's something that I am encouraging the leaders that I'm working with and the individuals I'm working with to consider as well, and to use it as a thought partner, right? So it's an extension of their leadership kit or their human interactive toolkit, so to speak, right? So it could be about what task can you have this automate for you, right? It could be around helping them develop sharper insights, even to make better decisions. Sometimes, there's one client that I'm thinking of that I said, have you considered using AI to brainstorm some of the business and people challenges that you're talking about, to help you scenario plan, what it could help you with a SOP plan, if you need to develop one. What are the challenges that you're currently seeing and facing within the business? How can you have a conversation with AI to help you think through what some of those outcomes might be? And even with some of the team members that you're speaking of, what does that mean? And how can you leverage AI? And, initially there was some resistance, but I also think that resistance comes from the unknown, right? And as humans, the way that we are with change sometimes, we might resist it. And that's part of our biological wiring. So I think that introducing it in fun ways, introducing it in baby steps, someone could become more open to it. But for me specifically, talking to them about how they can use AI to help them better analyze data that they might be looking at, talk to them about how they can use AI to help them better brainstorm business and people challenges and scenario plan so that they might be better prepared. That has been something that they have responded to and that we're working through. And how do you get better at those prompts as well?
Thanks, Charmaine. All right, and we'll try Cahill again. And so just talking about, I guess, the work you do, Cahill, can you just share how AI is becoming part of, your day-to-day work and work with your clients?
So the most important question would be, can you guys hear?
We did then? Yes.
Okay. I think, it's a tough one to answer because organizations and leaders sometimes they mix automation with AI. So lots of clients, whether they're in the government sector or in the private sector, they think that automating their HR processes or their business processes is linked directly with the AI systems. So I think it's one step towards a good thing if you're having a people and analytics system in place. Your organization is going to adopt some of the tools, so it's in the right step, but there is some sort of a difference that we need to understand, that the automation is something different than the usage of the AI. That's the first thing. So clarity needs to be there. At the current stage, as Debbie said, most of the organizations and the leaders are trying to use it for their own perspective. So, drafting good grammatical emails, grammar free, or coming up with, some eye-catchy presentations from presentations.ai or any other medium. So I think it's a good step. It's a small one, but I think there's a long way to go. With automation coming in, people analytics system being used, I think the HR systems and the business leaders will slowly move towards the AI thing. But one last thing, I think it's more to do with the skill set and the knowledge as well. So this is where the experts come in. Since there is no real platform available, no textbook available how to utilize AI in management consulting. So I think it's going to take some time as well.
Yeah, I guess there's a good opportunity there, isn't it, for consultants to actually, work and fill in this gap about enabling and augmenting businesses about how to use it properly. All right, and now come to Augustino. So from your experience in global HR roles, can you just share how it's impacting, the leadership you see in HR from your, global perspective? what's some of the thoughts you've got or
Yeah,
experiences?
great question, Rob. Thank you. Yeah, I believe AI has radically reshaped HR leadership globally by driving more data-driven decision-making, especially, and enhancing our ability to scale personalized employee experiences. According to McKinsey, I always like to bring some numbers to make it more clear. According to McKinsey, organizations that adopt AI at scale are seeing 2.3 times more likely to outperform their peers in key HR metrics such as employee engagement and retention. So the global nature of HR means that AI tools like sentiment analysis and predictive analytics are already allowing us to gain deeper insights into how our workforce behaves across different regions, while still respecting the cultural nuances and promoting inclusivity. So in this context, I believe AI is an enabler that helps HR leaders elevate their global influence. I also like to bring examples of organizations that are doing some work on this regard. And I really like Unilever, which is using AI-powered tools like Pymetrics for unbiased hiring decisions at scale, ensuring diversity is embedded at the core of its talent strategy. So as we continue to hear more and more about organizations trying and testing with different tools, I think organizations that operate at global scale will continue to benefit from it.
Thanks, Augustina. All right, let's move on. Like, we're already 20 minutes in. This just goes so fast all the time. And I guess I want to just focus in on how is it that we actually are going to empower and help leaders, which can be leaders that are actually, individuals that are on this panel watching and listening to the panel today. What's there that we can do for them? And I'm going to come to Debbie to start us off on that question. Thank you.
I think it's a great question. And so I'm actually, and Augustina, you shared some public companies. I want to share some current client insights, obviously not naming the organizations or the clients, but so I'm working with a couple of nonprofit leaders right now across a couple of different agencies. And one of the things that they're challenged by, right, is like, how are we really looking at the efficacy of our program? What data do we have available? And oftentimes, for those of us that work with nonprofit or public organizations, we know there's a challenge in getting data, knowing what the right metrics are to track, and how do we, and really having the full staff to generate the insights and things that public companies are able to get, right? And so part of this, I go back to Charmaine and say, where you said, like, right, how are you looking at scenario planning? How are you looking at opportunities and really getting specific business needs? So one of my clients who handles a whole bunch of programs, right, she's kind of sitting over a lot of different programs, is looking at, okay, she's expert in one of those pillars and not the other. So how is she using it personally to help with her learning curve, but also saying, okay, what are analytics out there? And then how am I using this data and working with my team to say, what are we learning? What are predictive analytics that I should be looking at? What are lead indicators and what are lag indicators? Because funders, right, they want a little bit of both. So here's a great example of saying someone who is proficient in, one part of the portfolio, knows how to think about things and maybe doesn't have the expertise in the other, is able to apply her expertise and then coupled with AI to say what might be reasonable things to ask this my team to do. How am I starting to get to the data? And then once they get the data, she's running it in the areas that she's confident in, so that she can say, yes, I can see how this is working. And then she's going to start running it in the areas that she's less expert in. And then again, bringing that to her team. So I think that's a great example of, if you're leading a program and you're sitting over things, start with what you know. and practice your prompts with what you know and see how you're able to use it. And then it's easier to go across and go up, which is what our leaders need to do all the time, right? They grew up in one area, they're given broader responsibilities, and they might not be expert, but how can they use their current skill set and then learn across? So that's, again, just an example. Was there a second part to that, or am I good with?
I think I might move on. I originally did think about having a second part, but given how we're almost halfway through, I think we'll move on, and I'll come to Cahill next. Unless anyone's got any key things to add to that last question, though. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. And I guess the focus that I'd like to look at next is, what are the key leadership skills needed to really navigate this AI-driven future? Is it something different as organizations, operate? So what else is needed in this AI future? And Cahill, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the overall concept of leadership needs to be redefined as well. So initially, it was more like, a leader who drives the mission, vision, and values, someone who understands candor and empathy in the Jack Welch school of thought. But I think nowadays, let's add few more things. Leader needs to be tech savvy, and leader needs to have good understanding of future scenarios. So they should understand how to do the futuristic foresights, develop futuristic scenarios, and they can be done quite easily. And most of the tools people use, but they don't realize that future scenarios can be done based on that, like SWOT analysis or Porter 5 forces. These basic things that are taught at the MBA level can bring in results as well. So I think understanding the future and some tech knowledge is crucial. That's the most important thing for any leader. Another important thing is understanding the new generation. So the upcoming people who are 18, 19, or 22, 23 years old are more tech savvy. They understand data analytics more. Their understanding of the concept is much better than people who are in their late 40s and the 50s. So let's just accept that. So I think not only becoming good at what they do, they need to understand what their team is capable of as well. So a leader might be in the 40s and the 50s, will get a lot of tech ideas. I work in the IT sector a lot. So the younger people come up with all sort of new ideas. Let's do this. Let's spend this much of PPC and let's utilize this sort of software in this region. Don't spend $10,000. Within $2,000, you're going to get a very good mock-up result, whether this market is successful or not. So I think this sort of skill set is more required. It's got more to do with the soft side, learning new things, upskilling themselves rather than being too technical. So I think once again, first of all, change in the mindset and learning technology will be the key leadership skill.
No, that's really an interesting point, and I guess I will ask a follow-up question for anyone else to jump on this, and that's the balance between technical skills and traditional leadership competencies. There needs to be. I think you're very right that a lot of leaders, not all, but haven't been very tech savvy. Whereas to drive some of these tech things where you're doing it yourself, you need to use the tools, as you'd say, essentially. So you're going to need to learn how to use the tools. So what competencies, or how is it that, and how can HR professionals, again, on this call, how can they help enable that? How do they help do that? Which is, again, really core to what this panel topic's about. You'd like to give that one a go? Anyone?
I would just like to add one thing. I work a lot with the leaders, and the most common thing is, and the most common complaint that we get is, leaders try to become one-man army. So you don't need to be the smartest or the most technical person in the room. So leadership is a different set of skills where you uplift other people bring all people on board, what we call as bring everyone in the game, and then utilize all the brains together through a proper values driven system, and then utilize the things. There might be someone who is better in terms of utilizing technical tools, someone good at foresight. So I think the leadership, a good leader's job is to combine those technical skills, the ability to understand future scenarios, or the financial acumen side, and bring them together. And I always say, the upcoming industrial revolution is for those who understand technology, and then they can merge the human side, because this is the era of AI and automation, and the successful leaders would be those people who know how to merge these things. Technology is very different from the human aspect, so upskilling, learning, utilizing those things. The key would be people who learn technology, but also they have the right mindset towards adopting technology and linking with the humans as well.
Hmm.
And
Thanks,
if I
Charmaine.
may here, Khalil, I want to add to this what you're bringing here. You mentioned before different generations and what they bring to the table. I think reverse mentoring can be very powerful here, as we can utilize different skill sets and even mindsets. Right? You're mentioning mindsets as well, as we mix different generations and how younger generations can upskill and reskill our more wise senior leaders.
Yeah, no, that's a really
And I just
good
wanted to add, Rod, just because I want to make
Yeah.
sure we're being balanced. While I know that there are some perceptions around age, I want to be mindful that just because someone is older doesn't mean that they are not technologically savvy, that they're not leaning in, that they're not running and being at the forefront of many of these areas. Yes, younger generations have had the benefit of being exposed to technology a lot earlier and navigating things. However, that does not detract from the fact that there are many people who are older, whatever somebody considers older, because I'm not going to label that are leading these conversations and leading the innovation in tech, in AI and beyond AI. So just want to make sure that we are also acknowledging that part.
No, that's very true, Charmaine. And yes, no, that's very true. There's quite a divergent. There's people that are young also that don't really use technology much. Now, I saw a question from Melissa in the comments, and I thought it's quite just worth exploring, which was, what does the panel think of having leaders experiment or play with AI before using the tool at work? And I just shared that help them feel more productive, probably more confident to be able to use that. So have it play first and then start to use it for work. So what's people's thoughts on that?
I can share here because I've seen some research in companies that are already using it in first in a test or pilot way. For instance, Coca-Cola, I know that they have introduced AI learning labs for senior leaders where they can explore AI-driven insights on consumer behavior and then apply those lessons to decision-making in marketing or supply chain. And so this approach, I like it because it's a pilot, it's experimentation, and in a way, it demystifies AI, right? It breaks it down and making it less about the technology itself and more about how it solves real business problems, which is what leaders care about, right?
Yeah. Yep, go on.
I want to go back to something that a lot of us talked about earlier. So first of all, thank you, Melissa, for that question. Because what I'm hearing is, like, how do we create a safe way for leaders to experiment? So whether it's play, whether it's, finding something specific, I think what that goes back to is, so if we're coaching our leaders, if we're in HR and we're coaching our leaders or supporting our leaders, right, it is, what are we doing around growth mindset? what are we doing to say like, hey, we are testing and learning? And the reality is no one has figured this out completely. As you pointed out, there is no textbook, there is no playbook. And so if we can remind them of when they've tested and learned before and say, it is your job, frankly, to role model testing and learning, then it's just seen as, okay, this is part of my work. And again, if we can break things down in a way that feels like not completely scary, but not boring, right? What's that place on that edge of our comfort zone where we know learning happens? I think that those are places where we in HR or as an external sort of coach role can really support our leaders. So Melissa, maybe your culture isn't there and you need to encourage them to play. I love the use of language. So if playing is going to resonate better, great. I'm doing a lot with mindsets and testing and learning and progress, not perfection. And so it makes sense to use the language that's resonating with your clients, whether they're internal and external, to help them lean in.
Yeah. And if I may add on that too, what can we celebrate and how can it be celebrated, right? If we are rewarded for play, if we are celebrated for play, we are likely to lean into it. So how do we think about how, when we're trying to learn something, how do we get someone excited about it? How do we get ourselves excited about it? What does that look like? How can we connect those dots? I worked at a company years ago, and one of the things we started to do to encourage that was transforming even the conference rooms around music themes. New York City, some like big artists. And what happened is that even just transforming the way the space looked invited people to play more, to experiment more, because they were inspired in that space. So what does that look like, whether you're in a virtual setting or in-person setting in the workplace or even in our personal lives? How can we help our environment support that desire or encourage us to play, as Melissa mentioned? And more importantly, for within an organization, how can play be rewarded and celebrated?
No, I really like that, Charmaine, and it brings me back to, like, I guess the starting question about people doing it in secret. It reminds me of, a long time ago, I was on a leadership course, and they wanted to give us this, a metaphor of learning how to juggle in the course. We had half a day of learning how to juggle, and at first, when you were having a go, you were trying to do it in private, and you were very uncomfortable. And it was only when we did exactly what you said, is that the instruction, a part of the day was then, when you drop the ball, you've got to celebrate the loudest. It's not about actually being able to juggle. Let's just celebrate having a go and just taking out that comfort factor. And so it was really about learning about working through that comfort zone. And I think that really, applies to what you're saying here. So we need to be comfortable to be able to share that we're using it, and that we're learning and we're applying, and then need to celebrate when we use it versus like when some areas, in fact in HR, some areas you see that, okay, someone's put in this job application and you can just tell that it's probably been written by AI, and so you then sort of discard the person. But is that really the right thing? Because they still could be a great person. They just might be great at how to do a prompt and all that sort of stuff. So they're not necessarily the skills that you're hiring for. So yeah, it's quite an evolving space. Now, there's another good call out by Jordan about, AI is much like Google Translate. So it's a tool, and so it's just a tool where you just got to, there's more to it to get the most out of it. And just shared the example, like that's no substitute for using Google Translate than doing a class or being part of the culture. So yeah, anyone got any thoughts on Jordan's comment?
I would like to add one thing. I think there is way too much expectation on leaders when it comes to AI. So I think it needs to be slowed down a bit. Trust the process, because it's a new thing. There will be learning within the process. AI is your sort of a decision advisor. It is going to help you out in your daily task and your decision making. I worked with a client in the government sector. They said, we have a very good AI system in place. It gives up extremely excellent suggestions, but the decisions are not being implemented. But when we reviewed their HR process, it was the decision that the AI took based on data that needs to be reviewed by the board of governors, and board of governors would come to the office after every 15 days. So the decision that AI took was impending for 15 days because of board of governors. So it's not the fault of the leader or of AI system, but it's got to do with the process. And I think once we move along, these processes will improve and there is going to be much more improvement. So I think first of all, we need to give some time to HR, to leaders, and for the AIs to evolve as well. I call it sort of a machine learning. The more data and more input you give to machine, the better it becomes. So the more we utilize AI, the more we utilize the decision making process going to get refined. I don't have the timeline. It can be done possibly in 6 months or 6 years, but in the very near future, our AI tools and decision making will be a lot better than what is right now.
Rod, and if I may add to Khalil's point, I think it's very, very important because he touched on the issue of accountability behind decision making when using AI. And I think we are already embedding a lot of machine learning in the HR systems we have for promotions, performance management, hiring. And so it has to be clear that the final decision making and the accountability has to be made by a human. And in this, organizations have to be clear and verbalized and have written policies around this, so that leaders know when there is merit suggestions within our ERP, our systems, it's their final decision to say okay to this or okay to that, and not use that as, oh, the system said that I should do this or that. And so that becomes a blocker for leadership, right? So I think it's important that the issue of accountability here is not to be missed.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I guess both what you've shared here really brings me to the next question, which is, and I was going to come to Charmaine about this, is like, and Charmaine, you've helped businesses implement leadership strategies. How can leaders ensure AI is used ethically within their teams, particularly about making decisions that impact people, which we're just speaking about around decision making? So, what are your thoughts around that?
So many, but thank you for the question. All right. But really, it starts for me with clarity, and that centers around transparency and usage. How are we going to be using this? So organizations, leaders, team members, individual contributors, everyone needs to be on the same page and very clear about how are we going to be using this? When is it going to be used, especially in all areas? But when you're really thinking about decisions that have further implications or have legal connotations behind them, whether that's promotions, hiring, thinking about from the HR perspective, though, that's really critical. Everyone needs to be clear about how is it going to be used, when is it going to be used, what aspects are going to be used, and where and when does it show up? When does it not show up? And that message needs to be repeated. So for me, transparency is proactive. I'm telling you this up front. Honesty is reactive. So we don't want to wait for something to happen to then say, oh, let me tell you the honest truth about this. No, that's too late. It has to be proactive. It has to be transparent, and it has to be a message that's repeatedly communicated. Additionally, it has to involve diverse perspectives, right? We are in a global world. We are in a diverse world, diverse perspectives, and we have to consider those because we want to think about and train around bias. AI tools, all of them, reflect the data they've been trained on, all of them. So if the data that they've been trained on is one or two perspectives only, you're going to get responses and you're going to get outputs that are based on that. So it has to be very diversified. So if you want to talk about the ethical use of it, the more it's diversified, the more inputs, that's gonna help. And even if I think about that within the business context, cross-functional teams, not just ethnic, racial, cultural, but even cross-functional teams and perspectives, that needs to be in there, and it has to have oversight. And then my favorite word, accountability frameworks. You can't have ethics without having some type of framework that's going to outline what accountability is, how it's going to be measured, how it's going to show up. For me, one of the things that I have seen is, and this has nothing to do with AI, a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders, people in general will talk about accountability, but when it comes time to act on that, they're not following through. That is not real accountability. Accountability is following through on what you said was going to happen if something went off track. So to summarize that for me is transparency and usage, involving diverse perspectives, and ensuring that that accountability framework is there. It has to be there. It cannot be a we think, it has to be we act.
No, that's very good. Anyone else got anything to add on that question?
I would just like to add one thing, because it's such a great point that she has just explained. See, making it part of the strategy, corporate mission, vision, and values is a must thing. That's you cannot compromise on that. But when it comes to ethics, diversity, adding inclusion, I say AI is like your baby. The way you nurture it in the in the later part of your life, it's going to act accordingly. The personality is going to be developed accordingly. The sort of data you give to AI to learn, the machine learning behind it. So if you are putting in the same sort of data, hire people with a certain specific geographical background, or gender, or people who have studied from a specific university, uh, the filtration system is going to be the same. So there is no point in then utilizing such an AI system. It's not going to give you any fruitful results. So I think it's an extremely important point when we say ethics. We need to be we need to be extremely sure that ethics is in line with the best management practices as well. So the more data we give to AI, the more diverse data, the more we train it, it's going to bring in better results. So we don't need to make the same mistake again and again of the same inputs that we get when we say diversity and inclusion, and people from certain backgrounds do this sort of job in an effective manner. Let's get over it. Let's train our AI systems in a better way, so that we get better people. We are able to get a better decision making ability as well.
Thanks, Cahill. And I guess, has anyone got any examples, which could be good or bad, around this particular sort of topic around ethical AI usage, or lack of being ethical, that's had a direct impact on a team or an individual? Has anyone seen that in their experience?
I have, and to Khalil's point, I've seen it particularly, I think, from the HR perspective, even in the recruiting process, right? Because certain, in a candidate recruiting process, AI being trained on historical data. So if historical data had people, to Khalil's point, who came from certain universities, who were certain profiles, that means that there's bias built into your system. So when it's evaluating a candidate, it's going to be biased in how it's evaluating that client. And that's something that I, this year, earlier this year, had to talk through with a client around.
Right.
You're saying that AI is helping to advance, your recruiting efforts and is removing bias, but let's talk about the bias that's inherently built in based on how it's been trained. So that was I'm going to say, wake-up call for that leader. And it really made them think about, is this the time to actually try to use AI for this effort because we have some data cleaning to do. And data cleaning means we have to change the way that we've historically been structured and run our business and recruited people, because we need to be more inclusive to then get the type of data set that would get us to the point that we can use AI in this way. So yes,
Yeah.
have seen it, have advised on it.
Very good. Anyone else got any war stories? All right, we've got another question from the audience, and it's good to incorporate the input from the audience. So what ways or ideas can you suggest to monitor and assess the impact of adopting AI technology in a company? Has anyone got any thoughts that can help there? So monitor and assess, I guess, is the key words there, and about the impact.
See, I would just like to add, when you make something part of your corporate mission and vision, implementing it in your organization becomes easier. So, tying it with your value system, values that are not only monitored but also rewarded, I think it's extremely important. We introduce the concept of praising people or
Oh, he's frozen again. Anyone else got anything to add on to that particular question about monitoring and assessing? All right. Well, we'll move on, and I'll come to Augustina on the next question, which is really about what strategies can be adopted and be employed to foster AI literacy amongst the leadership. And I guess we've spoken about a few of these already, but what else would you suggest?
Yeah, so I believe that fostering AI literacy requires HR to create a culture of continuous learning and experimentation. As you said, Rod, we touched on this. And HR can provide tailored learning journeys for leaders, combining both the technical AI knowledge to the real world business application. I do consider that specifically for leaders, they need to see how AI can help support real challenges. Otherwise, I believe adoption and traction will be really slow. I think it was Debbie that mentioned at the beginning that she's supporting leaders in terms of streamlining work, productivity. Leaders are all about that. So I love that when organizations can think of these programs, there is an ultimate pain or challenge or issue that leaders can benefit of when applying and increasing their AI literacy.
Yeah, and I guess, leaders probably as a topic is quite broad, isn't it? You've got the executive, middle management, and then team leaders in a way. So, and maybe they've all got different needs and different ways they need to get help. Anyone had any experience with those different levels?
One thing that I've been thinking about is my former company, and I'm want to bridge to Charmaine how you brought up talent acquisition and recruiting, and in particular we're thinking about ethical and the data set that we have. And I would say so we had to give a little bit of background, right? We had an accelerated development program, right? And one of the challenges that we gave them, business challenge, was thinking about the pain points that managers were feeling across the organization. And so one of the things that the group recommended was, could we actually start with AI and build a data set to help managers around coaching and developing and performance? And so when we think about in the HR universe, are there safer places? Are there that we can start really experimenting with HR or with AI? And we talk about 2 years ago it was all about the skills transformation, and how are we looking at different candidates based on skills versus resumes, and how people are really looking for the learning and growth. So it goes back to skills. And so maybe I'm biased as a former chief talent officer, but I think there's a space there that is easier to start, right? So we're talking about skills and what you need to be successful for the next level. So I just want to share, I'm excited to see where this group is coming in and where they're using external data as well as internal data around just-in-time support for managers For example, I'm about to have a really challenging conversation. Can you remind me the forms of like how I can prepare my feedback? Or someone didn't get a promotion, but they were a really good candidate. What are some ways or some things I can be thinking about it? So again, real-time challenges that we're hearing all the time in the organization and using AI to support that. So hopefully that's kind of a bridge to your question and what Charmaine raised.
And I guess the follow-on question is, I guess, what are the common barriers? I mean, we've obviously spoken a lot about the comfort zone type barriers, but what other barriers to AI literacy do you see organizations face at the moment? And how, again, can HR professionals really help overcome those? You know, what can people practically do to really help develop the business and develop leaders with AI?
Here, Rod, I think leaders are no different to other people in the organization, and fear is a big barrier. Fear of job displacement, right, or even the complexity of AI itself. And here, I think HR plays a pivotal role by facilitating change management around this and addressing these concerns head on. It's not about AI replacing jobs. It's about being an enabler of more strategic, fulfilling work. And I think, again, HR here can be a great accelerator of this, both for employees and leaders.
Yeah, and I would add.
Yeah, go, Charmaine.
I was going to add that, thank you. You know, there's also like a lot of the misconceptions around AI. And then for me, something I've also seen, and this has been talked about here already, is the lack of training and the skill gaps, right? So how do I get that knowledge? How do I upskill? How do I develop in that area? Because if I am the leader of an organization, others are looking to me. And if I'm missing that, where am I getting it from? So that is something that I believe is really tied. In addition to other things, you know, like the data privacy and ethical concerns, you know, and let's be frank, technology has been changing a lot. Sometimes we are burned out by constant evolution. We are. There's but so much capacity as humans we have for continual change and the need to adopt and a lean to learn more. So at some point, we all get to a point where we're like, I just want to go into the sand. I don't want to do anything else, and that's human. And that's one of the differentiators between us and AI. AI is not going to want to put its head in the sand. It's going to keep going, but we have to recognize our humanity and pause when we need to.
I think you bring up a very good point. I'm curious. Like I work in a large organisation, like very large, and there's hundreds and hundreds of courses that are available to the employees to learn all various different things. But I can't say that I can think of any that relate to AI, which is quite fascinating actually when I reflect on that from what you just shared. How organised are we to actually really enable the workforce, enable leaders. And I guess it's a question of, whose role is that? I'm not sure. All right, we've only got 2 minutes left. This has gone very quick. So I'll just, we'll go around our little virtual room one more and just, I guess we've talked about lots of things. What's one action sort of leaders can take from today's conversation? How do you sum it up? And Augustina, we'll start with you.
I think that try, experiment, think about one of your pressing issues. Devi and Charmaine mentioned many within the people management space, and I think those are safe areas where you can try and see how you can leverage AI as an enabler for better conversations with our employees, for preparing for a difficult conversation. So try and experiment and tie it to a specific need that you may have today.
Yep, very good. Charmaine? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yep, didn't get the button there. Yeah, I mean, people should just really view this, and this doesn't just have to be a leader, everyone, is how can this help support, not replace, right? Like what is the support that I can get from AI? How can I use it to help with the things that I'm doing? But it's never going to replace. It is a collaborator, but it's not the final decision maker. And that's something that we have to remember. AI will not be able to replace humanity. AI will not be able to get the nuance of the human experience, and AI will not be able to get the nuance of just human interaction. So we have to think of it in terms of how does it help support and embrace the fact that it will never be able to replace.
Well, that's well said, Charmaine. And Debbie, last but not least.
So when you go last, it's like, okay, well, they both already covered some key points. I actually want to go back to something that I think has been threaded throughout, which is I want us to take a step back and say, so HR's role sometimes, right, if it's individually coaching our leaders and helping a function, or it's looking at the employee experience, I think let's also take a step back and say, who needs to be in the room to be having some of these challenging conversations about where does this fit in our business? Where do we want to start? How do we want to think about ethics? And I think that HR can play a leadership role there in convening the space and saying, okay, let's think about the diverse perspectives. Let's think about roles in the organization, background of people, thinking about our customers, and how do we want to get a cross-functional group together and just even explore some of these topics that we talked about today. And if not us, then who? And how are we reaching out to our CIOs or CTOs? How are we reaching out to our COOs and our counterparts to say, let's talk about pain points, let's look at the business strategy, who could be in the room, and challenge who's in the room. So I think that there are some really strategic places that we can lean in to help the organization have the right conversations to start on these strategic paths.
I think that's a really good point, Debbie, and in fact, I noticed another comment by, Mark, and which I think was very related to what you just said there too. Like, who actually is accountable, responsible? Like, what career pathway is there? Who's going to be involved? Who's going to be the experts to help the organisation get a grip of this and help a systemic sort of implementation and adoption, I guess, of using this AI. It's all not going to happen by accident, is it? So it needs to be quite intentional. All right. Well, that brings us to an end, and I'd just like to again thank the panelists. Unfortunately, Gil had difficulties with communication, so he had to jump out. But thanks for a really fascinating conversation. One that we'll probably be having for much longer yet, I think. But yeah, thank you, and have a good rest of your day. So
thanks everyone, and thanks everyone who joined live.
Thank you.
Bye.